Hi 1301 students. I want to briefly walk you through a few things today. Some things that you should be cognizant of as you're writing, any type of writing. If it's a letter, an email, a short story, an essay, whatever it is, these are some suggestions to be mindful of. I'm going to start today with what's called sensory language, which is basically language that paints a picture for the reader by connecting to what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're smelling, tasting, or feeling. The five senses that we have as human beings, you sometimes need to engage those senses in your writing, and that's called sensory language, or language that connects to the five senses to create an image or a description. Here we have a hurricane. Right? It looks like it's on the coast somewhere, Florida or Texas, someplace like that. We are going to describe this hurricane using sensory language. We'd want to appeal to what we're seeing, correct? So, pause this video if you can and try to come up with a sentence that describes what you're seeing here. What I came up with was the wind whipped and bent the trees. Whipped and bent are two things that we see in this photograph. Therefore, that is sensory language. Now let's try it with sound. What would we hear if we were in this picture, in this photograph? The wind howled and moaned like a freight train. Again, we're using intense sound imagery to create a feeling to describe this picture. Howled and moaned, sensory language for sound. Now what about touch? What would we feel if we were standing here as this took place? How about the wind stung my eyes and threatened to rip the hair from my head? Again, intense, evocative words that we're using to describe what we would feel in this situation. Stung and rip. What about smell? How could we describe the smell of this scene if we were actually in it? The rainy air smelled metallic like a bag of copper pennies. So metallic and a bag of copper pennies. That was the only way I could think to describe the smell of rain, or when it's about to rain. And finally, taste. What would we be tasting here as we're standing in the middle of this hurricane? The sharp, metallic taste of rain filled my mouth when I screamed. So now we have two forms of sensory language, right? The sharp, metallic taste of rain and the scream that you would hear as you're in the storm. Here is an excerpt from a story by Truman Capote entitled A Christmas Memory. If you want to pause this video, just take a look at the sensory language in this paragraph. There's examples of things we see, things we hear, things we smell, things we taste, and sounds as well. So take a moment, pause the video, see if you can pick out any sensory language from this paragraph. And that is it. As far as sensory language is concerned, another few topics I would like to go over with you include mood, tone, and connotation in writing. So what does that mean exactly? Well, mood in writing refers to the general atmosphere or the emotional complexion of whatever it is you're writing or whatever it is you're reading. Generally, there is a pervasive atmosphere or emotionality to it. It could be lighthearted. If you think of the Sedaris personal narrative we read, Giant Dreams, Midget Abilities, that was a lighthearted piece. It wasn't very serious. It was funny. It was laid back. It was relaxed. Mood could also be, you could be reading a somber piece, something that's sad in tone or reflective or calm. It could be academic, which some of your essays will or should be. Academic is a mood, and so is reflective. So again, these are just examples of moods in writing. Tone is not the same as mood. These words get mixed up sometimes in terms of what they mean, but in writing, tone refers to the attitude of the writer toward the subject that they're writing about or that you're writing about. So depending on your attitude, the piece you're writing could be angry or serious, could be either positive or negative, it could be passionate. That's up to you. Again, your tone comes across in your word choice, your diction, right? And it's the overall attitude or feeling that you have toward the subject coming through in the writing. Finally, we have connotation, and that refers to an idea or feeling that a word invokes in addition to its literal or primary meaning or denotation. So certain words have certain feelings that are conjured up when you speak them or write them. This is beyond our control. I mean, we can't change the connotation of a certain word, although connotation does change over time sometimes. We're not really in control of that, so we need to be aware of what connotation exists already for certain words. Connotation can be positive, negative, or neutral. Some words don't really have a connotation. Let's take a look at some examples. On the left here, you have a series of words, and on the right, you have a similar word to the word on the left, and both have similar denotations or definitions, but the connotation is different. So if we look at two words like skinny and thin, the word thin has either a positive or a neutral connotation. We don't really think of anything negative when we think of the word thin, but the word skinny has a slight negative connotation where it can. Same thing with aggressive and assertive. When you think of the word aggressive, that generally has a negative connotation, whereas assertive has a positive connotation. He or she is assertive, they go after what they want, they let you know what they want, they're being assertive. Whereas if we said he or she is aggressive, it might mean the same thing or something very similar to assertive, but it has a negative connotation to it. What about bold and brash? Which of those do you think has a negative connotation and which has a positive connotation? And then what about bossy or commanding? Would you rather be known as commanding or bossy? I believe bossy has a negative connotation, whereas commanding has a positive connotation. Same thing with shy and timid. Shy has a neutral or, I don't know, I would say it's just neutral. It's not positive or negative in terms of connotation, but timid definitely has a negative connotation. Ignorant and unknowing, I would say ignorant has a negative connotation, whereas unknowing just means you simply do not know something. It's a neutral connotation. There's no positive or negative feelings associated with that word. And then finally, nosy and inquisitive. Inquisitive means you're curious, you want to know what's going on, you're poking around for something, right? But nosy, on the other hand, is a negative connotation. It means roughly the same thing as inquisitive, but its connotation is negative. So connotation is just something to be aware of as you write, and this concept will come into play as we do our writing assignments this week. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Any questions about sensory language, mood, tone, or connotation, or about anything else, kyle.smith@cisco.edu. Thanks and have a great week.